Sofia Zhukova. Remember the Brothers Grimm story of Hansel and Gretel? Two siblings get lost in the forest and wander until they find this house made of sweets. Hungry and tired, they enter the house of sweets. Once inside, they meet an elderly evil witch who then takes them hostage and attempts to eat them. Only, the story you're about to hear isn't a grim fairy tale. It's a tale of a killer granny whose treats were not so sweet. Known as the Killer Granny, Granny Sonia, or the Russian Granny Reaper, 81-year-old Sofia Zhukova would take the lives of 3 people in a Russian community. One of her victims was as young as 8 years old. She cut up the bodies using an axe, then throwing pieces out the window to feed the neighborhood dogs. It's said that when officers raided her home, they found human remains in her refrigerator, and that she made jellied meats from certain parts of the body. Sofia Zhukova, born 1939 in the small Russian village of Zyangino, grew up on a farm. Because of the lack of education, she would struggle to find a proper job. Landing a job in the local slaughterhouse, she would hone her skills in hewing up pig parts. However, to find better work, she would leave her village and settle in another village outside of the province of Khabarovsk. There she met her husband and gave birth to 2 boys. It's said her husband always wanted a girl. Speculative, but this could be why her husband took a real shine to young Anastasia Alexenko. This is where the lines of sanity and grief get blurred and take on a murderous grim tale. Sadly, Sofia's husband passed away, and his death must have been the catalyst to her madness. Neighbors said her attitude became unbearable. The apartment building she lived in seemed tight-knit. Neighbors knew each other and looked out for each other. Sofia had become very controversial, arguing and yelling at children playing in the neighborhood. On the 14th of December 2005, Sofia would take the life of little Anastasia Alexenko. The last anyone remembered seeing her was when she buzzed herself into the apartment building. Anastasia was 8 years old, and if you remember, she had been a favorite of Sofia's husband. At the time of Anastasia's disappearance, though, authorities didn't think of the elderly neighbor. Not even her neighbors thought of crockety elderly women would be a suspect. However, Sofia did do something out of character. She offered her neighbors and the children of the neighborhood sweet treats and savory foods. Some took the treats and others thought it odd. According to her testimony to authorities, Sofia hated little Anastasia because her husband doted on the young girl. He would invite her in and give her treats. She even complained about the young girl laughing and playing throughout the building. She said it irritated her. During her interrogation and trial, Sofia told authorities how she met little Anastasia on the stairs and seized the opportunity. She snatched her and took her into her apartment. In the apartment, she battered the young girl, then took an axe and dismembered her body. Days later, the head of Anastasia Alexenko would be found a few blocks away from the building. Authorities investigated the death and disappearance of Anastasia, but the case went cold. The residents in the area became panicked as they thought a serial killer had begun his or her reign of terror in the area. People became very cautious with their comings and goings throughout the neighborhood. 8 years would go by, and Sofia would take the life of a 77-year-old Anastasia Makieva. Anastasia was a friend and neighbor of Sofia. Anastasia decided to move in with her daughter in Moscow. She sold and packed up her apartment, but decided to stay a few days with her friend Sofia. The date of the murder is not clear, but it happened between late March and early April of 2013. Anastasia's daughter contacted the local police to file a missing persons report. Her mother had not made it to Moscow. Authorities did question Sofia about her friend's disappearance, but the evil granny had a story to spin. She told authorities that Anastasia indeed left, and the last time she saw her friend, she had been getting into a cab. Soon, the story would be debunked, as body parts of the 77-year-old victim would be discovered in the area. Again, authorities questioned Sofia, and they even found blood in the apartment. Only this cunning granny had an explanation. She told them that due to her high blood pressure, Anastasia had a nosebleed, and that's where the blood came from. Another mysterious disappearance, but this time it would cause a blip on the authorities' radar. With no real evidence, they couldn't arrest Sophia. Was it luck, or was the evil granny too cunning for the police? In her testimony, Sophia would confess to the murder of her friend Anastasia Makeva. She told the police that they got into an argument and that she became angry. Feeling disrespected, she attacked her friend with an axe. She dismembered Anastasia and put her body parts in different trash bins. Now that is too extreme for a minor argument. Sophia even told authorities she had to make multiple trips to the bins so the neighbors wouldn't become suspicious. Also, she would once again make sweet treats and jellied meats for her neighbors and the neighborhood children. In time, this evil Nan would strike again. This time, her victim was 57-year-old janitor Vasily Skykovich. This one would be the straw that broke the camel's back. It had been 6 years since the disappearance of Anastasia Makeva and 14 years since the disappearance of little Anastasia Alexvenko. January 2019, Sophia would kill her third victim, Vasily Skykovich. Vasily's death brought authorities straight to Sophia's front door. The janitor had been reported missing by his co-workers after he missed many days off work. His body parts were also found in the same dump sites as little Anastasia's. Once authorities were able to make an identification, they began questioning the neighbors. The neighbors informed the investigators that Vasily had been renting a room from Sophia. Spinning more webs of lies, the killer granny told police she didn't know Vasily, which they knew wasn't true. This time, Sophia was taken in for questioning and arrested for the murder of Vasily. After hours of being interrogated, the murderous Nan tried to spin her last lie. She told police that Vasily had come home with a friend and that they attempted to rape her. Defending herself, she grabbed an axe and chopped at Vasily. Police wasn't buying the story. Upon further investigation, they concluded the elderly landlord killed her tenant and chopped up his body. During her trial, Sophia would admit to murdering Vasily Skykovich. She chopped up his body and threw parts out the window for the local wild dogs to eat. You would think this story couldn't get any more horrendous, but it did. This part will make you think twice about accepting food from your neighbor. According to Sophia, after she killed her victims, she kept certain parts for consumption. She also created treats and jellied meats that she passed out to the neighborhood children and her neighbors. During the investigation, police heard multiple stories from neighbors. They reported hearing strange noises coming from Sophia's apartment, sounds you would hear at your local butcher shop, banging and clashes. This too made neighbors apprehensive about accepting food from their neighbor. One neighbor would go on record saying that she grew suspicious of Sophia. Around the neighborhood, she wasn't exactly known for her generosity or even being nice. Everyone thought she was a grumpy old woman. This made her hesitant to take anything from the old woman. The neighbor said that her husband cautioned her about taking anything Sophia offered. He proved to have great intuition. Eventually, the deaths of 8-year-old Anastasia Alexvenko and 77-year-old Anastasia Makeva would be connected to the evil granny. During her time of being held for murder of Vasily, the killer granny bragged to women in the jail about her killing young Anastasia and her friend. Disturbed by the boasting, they notified police. It said that even the inmates feared the behavior of Sophia. No one was prepared to have this case before them. An elderly woman who appeared fragile in appearance, walking with a cane and seemingly too weak to take on a man like Vasily, had been on a Maringer's rampage for the span of 15 years. Throughout the years, we've heard stories from across the world of female serial killers. Women like Elizabeth Bathory, who murdered young women to bathe in their blood. Lizzie Borden, who murdered her father. Aileen Wuornos, who murdered men in Florida. Yet none could prepare you for the murderous spree of a woman over the age of 70. Sophia would become one of Russia's eldest serial killers. Who knows? She's maybe the eldest female serial killer in history. At the age of 81, Sofia Skokova left police baffled as she went to trial. Sofia never showed remorse or apologized for the murders. Her behavior in the courtroom had been very strange. She would have outbursts of laughter and behave badly against the police officers. Sofia even threatened the brother of her first victim, Anastasia Alexenko. She told the little girl's mother that she would kill the brother as well. That's so sick and disturbing, especially coming from a woman her age. Only Sofia wouldn't stand trial for her gross actions. While awaiting trial, she contracted COVID-19 and died before she could be held accountable for the murders of 8-year-old Anastasia Alexenko, 77-year-old Anastasia Makieva, and 57-year-old Vasily Skykovich. Oh, how life takes a mad turn. Who knows how long this killer granny would have continued? Also, who knows if these were her only victims? Could we say her childhood played a role in her murderous actions? Growing up in a small village, working at a slaughterhouse. Would this cause her to become curious of the body and its form? Could we ask if she was bullied? When she was younger, people would consider her physical features more masculine. Moving to a bigger area, you would think would change her perspective. Finding love would quench any murderous thoughts. We know she married and loved her husband deeply, raised 2 boys, who by the way didn't attend the trial and totally disconnected themselves from their mother. Did they see things growing up that would have prevented the horror? We know that after her husband's death, something broke and she began to terrorize the neighbors and the neighborhood children. She admitted her hatred for young Anastasia and feeling disrespected by her friend Anastasia. Yet, we have no real motive for Vasily. Did he come home at the wrong time, or was it premeditated? These are all questions we're left with. Here's a food for thought. Sofia was considered by doctors to be quite sane and in control of her faculties. Most murderous crimes, especially with serial killers, are murders of opportunity. This tragic story teaches us to never judge a book by its cover. Something or someone could appear harmless, but deep down we don't know their true intentions. Be cautious of what you eat from strange neighbors. These aren't tips to scare you. Just always keep your eyes open and pay attention. This murderous granny has left a scar on the families of the victims, the neighborhood, and the Russian people. This is truly a cautionary tale.